Welcome back to the MindFix Masterclass. In this video, you're going to watch a real life demo of us doing what we call our level 2 work. So if level 1 is conscious mind work, level 2 is where we go in and we identify the programs and the subconscious beliefs and the belief systems and the kind of lines of code that are running in the background that are keeping you stuck in some type of counterproductive behavior or counterproductive emotional or thought pattern. In other words, there's some type of pattern you're experiencing that's not serving you. And we go in and we find some of these root causes at this level 2 work. We identify them first, and then we go ahead and clear them and we delete them. And oftentimes, this concept of being able to delete or clear programs or beliefs or these things that are keeping you locked into ways of being or feeling that don't serve you. When I talk about it with people, whether I'm presenting at a conference or I'm on a call with someone who's inquiring about MindFix, a lot of times there's is this possible? You're telling me that this thing that's running in the background that I've had for 3 decades, it can go away or it can be cleared, it can be released or lessened through conversation? And I say yes. And this video is going to show you how that's possible, because as much as I try to describe it with words, sometimes it's just easier to watch something happen. So today, what you're going to get to see is one of our lead coaches, belief and unlearning coaches, Jackson, working with a volunteer here, Bryant. And prior to this recording, they already talked about the pattern that Bryant wants to clear and work on. They already talked about the thing in Bryant's life that is not serving him and not allowing him to move forward to what he consciously desires and move forward to, it's not allowing him to feel the way he wants to feel and think how he wants to think. It's keeping him stuck. So they've identified what that is already. And so what we get to do here in this level 2 work is okay, we've got this pattern, we've got this way of being that's not working. Let's figure out and identify what's causing it. What are some of these root causes? What are the programs? What are the lines of code? What are the beliefs that are keeping this pattern locked into place? So step 1 is going to be identifying why it's there. And then step 2, we're going to take one of those root causes, one of those beliefs, one of those lines of code, and we're going to delete it for Bryant here. And you're going to get to watch one of the ways in which we do that. So without further ado, Jackson, would you like to take over and proceed with the demo here?
Definitely.
Thanks.
Cool. So like Aaron said, Bryant and I have already identified the pattern of his that we are going to be working on today, which is, I have a fear that no matter how successful I am, I may lose all the money. And Bryant, I'm wondering if you could just tell me a little bit more about that pattern now.
I think just like I've had some success in my life. I'm considered one of the best in my field, but there's always this underlying almost like anxiety, panic, something that like no matter how good I get, no matter how successful I am, that it could just all go away. And it like almost prevents it. I feel like it like prevents me from really like going all out, because like what's the point of going all out and really like pushing the limits of maybe what I could do or how successful I could be, because I could just lose it all anyways. And that's just this constant thought that's like kind of nagging at the back of me, like that. Yeah,
that makes sense. So, and you know, we initially wrote was that there's a fear that no matter how successful you are, you may lose all the money. And I'm curious if right now, in this moment, if you can feel or identify that fear anywhere in your body.
Oh yeah, it's like right here. It's like this weight, it's this like anxiety, this like tension, like thinking about it.
That specifically. Cool.
Yeah.
So for just a moment, I'm wondering, can you just go to the center of that feeling and just tell me, if that feeling had a voice, what would it say?
It had a voice. What would it say? Why try so hard? It doesn't matter anyways. Like
Mhm.
that would be what that voice was probably saying.
Okay. And what else might that voice have to say?
Try as you might, like it doesn't matter how good you are, how successful you are, how much money you make, it could all be gone in an instant. And you could be right back at square one, which you've basically spent your whole life trying to not
Yeah.
live back there.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like this voice is saying that, just like you said earlier, that it could all just go away. And I'm curious to ask this voice, like, what has you thinking this way?
I guess I've seen it multiple times in my life, but like in particular, when I was a child, like my dad had a fairly successful business um, in a small town in Arizona, and he ended up getting sick like overnight, and we lost everything.
Okay.
And like he was never able to recover from that, like because the illness was like one that
Mm-hmm.
stayed
Mm-hmm.
throughout our whole life, and so
And
I think that's where it, like when I think about losing everything, that's that first example of losing everything and then never being able to recover.
totally. And thank you for sharing that. And does it feel real to a part of you that if you have that success, that you'll lose everything and not be able to recover?
Oh yeah. It like is, I'm starting to feel like panicky about it,
Got it.
thinking about it.
Got it. And does it feel real to you that you might have first discovered that idea with the memory that you just told me about with your
Yeah.
dad?
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
So we're going to come back. We're going to go back to that memory right now. And can you tell me a little more about what happened specifically?
Um, so I was about 6 years old, and like I don't remember all of the specifics about it, but my dad got ridiculously sick, and it was, I found out it was something genetic that his dad had had, his grandma had had, but it came on so suddenly and in such a way that he was literally unable to work. It caused complete chaos in our life. We ended up losing the business. Our home that we had at the time ended up having to move from where we lived down to another area to help manage it better. And it just, like, my whole life was upended, and our
Yeah.
family's whole life was upended. Like nothing stayed the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it never got anywhere close back to feeling
Got it.
comfortable again, I guess.
And before that had happened, you said that you would have said that your dad was quite successful by what
Yeah,
that means for you.
yeah, like for my dad in the environment where we're in, all of that stuff, he was pretty successful. He owned an upholstery and a saw shop business, and
Okay.
like everybody came to him over the competition, even in this little region. And like, yeah.
Got it. Okay. And I'm curious, what what you told me is that your dad was successful and then he suddenly got very sick and that he wasn't able to work and that the business eventually closed and that you guys had to move,
Mhm.
right? And things were different after that.
Yep.
And I'm curious for you to hear, how does that mean that if you're successful, you will lose everything and never be able to recover? And you don't have to worry about answering from your conscious mind, like whatever feels real to you. How does that mean that that applies to you?
And it doesn't matter how successful I am, something could happen that could cause me to lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I might not have control over that thing that causes that to happen. And I might not have control over being able to recover in that, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah. So No, that makes sense. And so, like I said, the raw data is that there you were, and your dad got sick, and the business closed, and things changed, and then you moved, and things didn't seem to go back the way they were before that all happened. One way that we can interpret that experience is, if I'm successful, no matter what, I'm going to lose everything, and I'm not going to be able to recover. What might be another way to interpret that might be a little more whole and complete of an interpretation?
That my dad, in this specific instance, wasn't able to, like, essentially lost the success he had because of something physical that happened to him, and that impacted everything else.
And was the success the trigger for the illness?
In some ways, yes, because
How so?
so his disease had to do with like the red blood cells and oxygen and stuff like that. And so him working in a saw shop around smoke and chemicals and upholstery and dust and all of these things reduce the oxygen load on his body anyways. We lived up in the mountains. Like there was just all of these things that could have been a catalyst to cause it
Got
to
it.
happen.
So that actually makes a lot of sense. So are all businesses in life ones with those same conditions that could lead to that kind of illness?
No.
Of course not, right? So another way to interpret this might be that your dad was working and creating a business that was seemingly potentially had elements of it that would catalyze this kind of illness. And so as he was engaging in that kind of business, it might have been more likely that that would happen, which is why he had to eventually close it because he got sick. But not every kind of business in the world has that same likelihood for that kind of illness. And so if you were successful in other fields, it might not actually apply. It was just that one industry. And it may also be that it was just your dad's response, but maybe it was a little more likely. So is it possible that that was just one type of business and one sample of your dad, and that it doesn't apply to all businesses or all forms of success?
Yeah, that's possible.
Okay. Does that feel real to you?
Yeah, that feels real to me.
Okay.
There's a part of me that like fights against that.
Okay. I'm curious, if you gave that part a voice, what would it have to say?
I'm
It's all
trying
right.
to like, I'm trying to put it into words. Like, I guess it goes back to where I said there's been multiple instances in my life that I think it's kind of like reinforced it, where I decided at a very young age I would not go into something manual labor because I didn't want that risk that my dad had.
Yeah.
So I went into something that was very mental labor. And then I ended up having something that was completely out of the blue that completely reduced my capacity to do some of the work that I did. And I almost lost everything.
Yeah. So I can understand why that might reinforce it. And I want us to come back to for a moment, just back to your dad situation when you were a kid, right? Another way to interpret what happened with him is that it would at least be significantly less likely that something would happen to you in that way if you were successful, or that if it did, you were in a different industry, it might not be directly related to the fact that you were being successful. Does that resonate?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then perhaps things in life could happen, but it might not be that it's going to be directly correlated to the fact that you were successful, whereas your dad's work might have actually been correlated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So is it the absolute truth that if you're successful, you will lose everything and you won't be able to recover just because your dad got sick while building a very specific kind of business and he had to close it?
And that's not the absolute truth.
And does that feel real to you?
Yeah,
Cool.
it does.
Sweet. So who interpreted that experience to mean if I'm successful, I'll lose everything and I'll not be able to recover?
I did.
No. And where did that interpretation take place?
Took place inside of me.
Yeah.
My thoughts, emotions.
Correct. Well, thoughts, right? And the emotions might be the byproduct
Yeah,
of
it came
those
with
thoughts.
it. Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is if we could go back into that moment, did you ever see anywhere with your eyeballs in 3D space, if I'm successful, I'll lose everything and won't be able to recover?
No.
And what did you actually see?
I didn't see anything like that. I just saw the experiences that happened around me. My dad getting sick, him losing stuff, our family changing.
Cool. And knowing that, can either of us or anyone say for certain that anytime you're successful, you'll lose everything and you won't be able to recover just because of what happened with your dad?
No.
Does it feel correlated in any way right now?
No.
Cool. So now just close your eyes for a second. And I want you to imagine that you're there again. I know it was scary. Imagine that you're there where you're first finding out about the things happening with your dad and the business might have to close. And just imagine that your current, most modern, most peaceful, deepest knowing adult self could have arrived in that moment for you. And see him just come in and he takes you a drive somewhere that you'd always really wanted to go. Somewhere that made you feel very safe and abundant. And you're in that place away from all the other stuff. And just imagine that he got down with you. He said, "Hey, I just want you to know that I understand that this probably feels pretty scary. What's going on with your dad and what's going on with the business, and a lot of things are changing. But I want you to know that your dad's business, with what he does, it sometimes makes it a little more likely that this kind of thing can happen, because he works in a certain kind of shop where you can get sick. And that doesn't happen to everyone who's in this kind of business or shop, but sometimes it's a little more likely. And your dad is a little more susceptible. And so for him, some of this is happening and it might impact the future of his success. But it's really important that you know that this is not a risk in all businesses. It's not even always a risk in this kind of business. but it's especially not a risk in a lot of the things that you're probably interested in doing. And things in life may happen, but it's really important that you know that if you go off and you do the things you want to do, and you become very successful, it's not going to correlate if anything bad happens. That almost always only good things will come with the success. What's happening with your dad is a very specific situation, and I know it's scary, and I honor that. But I just want you to know that it doesn't apply to everything in life. So you're going to make it through this, and just know that when it comes to success in business, if bad things happen, it's not because of that. And then imagine and see that older you pull out a little crystal ball in his hand. And there's a scene in this crystal ball of a future you who is completely free from the idea that if you're successful, it'll all just be taken away. What are you seeing in that scene?
I look happy. I look carefree. I'm going about life, just doing the things that I love and that I'm good at.
There you go. And what are people saying to that Bryant in that crystal ball scene?
That they're proud of him, that they're proud of me. They see the success I've had and the impact I've had on people and my family, and the sky's the limit. And we see the potential in the future.
And how is that Bryant feeling in that crystal ball scene?
He feels peaceful. He feels happy. He feels free.
Cool. So now, just see that older you who's holding the crystal ball. He just says, hey, I want you to know that this is your future. This is who you are. It's who you've always been. It's who you always will be. And this situation with your dad is just one thing. It doesn't apply to this. And he hands you that crystal ball and he tells you just to bring it to your stomach. He says you can just feel this and become this and merge with this now. You can keep this crystal ball and you can look at it anytime you like for the rest of your life. And then you keep it, and he does bring you back home, and you still see the same things and you still hear the same things with what was going on with your dad. But now, after all of that, would you still have concluded, if I'm successful, I'll lose everything and I'll never be able to recover? What would you have concluded instead, looking at what's happening with your dad and your family?
This really sucks, and that it's really painful. It's really hard. But I'm not my dad. And just because this is happening to my dad and my family and everything, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen to me.
And how would that have felt emotionally to be thinking that way in those moments?
It would have been a lot less stressful. It would have felt less weight, more free, more hope.
Yeah. I mean, where would you have felt that freedom and hope in your body?
Like, especially in my heart, but through my chest, like warmth.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead and go to the center of that feeling in your body. Just allow that fully. I want to ask you, what were you most needing in those moments as a child?
to know that though everything was changing, that everything would be okay, and that I would be all right, and that my future would be good.
So go ahead and breathe into your physical heart. And with each breath from this adult place of peace and knowledge, just give the energy of those needs, of that assurance, of that understanding that it'll be okay. Give all of those needs with each breath from your heart to that part of you that most needed that in those moments. And also give gratitude to that part of you with each breath, because he was just trying to get those needs met, and he had very positive intentions. Just keep breathing into your heart, giving the energy of those needs to that part of you until those needs feel a little more met, taking as much time as you need. Just let me know when that feels a little bit complete.
That feels good.
Cool. And how do you feel in this moment?
I feel more peaceful.
Cool.
Like a weight's lifted.
Yeah. And does it feel real to you right now that no matter what, if you're successful, you'll just lose everything and never be able to recover?
No,
And what's possible when you're free from that?
anything. Like I can pursue what I'm good at, what I want to do, without fear of judgment or repercussions. And I can really excel. I don't have to hold myself back.
And from that possibility, what are your intentions?
I'm going to live my life like that, free. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to go all out in being successful as I can be, in doing the things that I want to do.
And what do you love about those intentions?
It makes me happy. It feels really good. It feels like I'm actually living up to my potential, being willing to try those things for the first time in my life. And I'm not going to hold myself back from what my potential success could be.
Amazing. To come back, I just want to ask you, what is one sensation you notice in your physical body?
It's almost gratitude or joy. Like,
Cool. Cool.
yeah.
And then what's one thing you notice in your environment right now to come back with us here?
I noticed the drawings on Aaron's wall.
Cool.
Like they're
All right.
happy. They're like little monsters, but they're happy.
Yeah.
And they're like kind of excited.
Yeah.
Like I am right now.
Cool. Well, welcome back.
Thanks.
Sweet.
Yay! Welcome back, Bryant. Normally I'd be like, how do you feel? But Jackson did a really beautiful job of kind of tying the experience together. It was really wonderful to be able to watch the process. And for the people who are kind of watching this experience for the very first time, I'm just going to reiterate kind of what you saw. Because for some people, they're going to be like, okay, so there are some questions, like what happened exactly? What am I watching here? So to summarize what just transpired for people who are kind of tuning in and seeing this for the first time, our friend Bryant here had a problem. He had a challenge that, even though he had worked on it over the years, had been plaguing him. It was this fear. And Brian's done a lot of personal development work. He's been to therapy. He's tried a lot of different things over the years, but this fear was sticky. It was keeping him stuck. It was holding him back in different areas in life and in business. And so by coming to MindFix and looking at the MindFix approach, we go, okay, you've got this pattern, you've got this thing that won't go away, you've got this fear. We could sit and talk about it all day, but you've kind of been doing that for many years and that hasn't worked so well. So let's do something. Let's actually have an impact. Let's actually experience transformation. So we took this fear and we looked underneath the surface and said, what kind of programming must be looping in the background of somebody's mind and someone's subconscious? What beliefs are in the background, what we call kind of level 2 of the mind, that may be causing this fear to stick and maybe causing it to not go away. And so what we just watched was Jackson found one of the primary lines of code, one of the primary beliefs holding this pattern into place. So they identified it at the beginning of the session. And then all of those questions and that process that you watched Jackson flow through with Bryant and where he guided him through this process was one of our processes of deleting or clearing a belief or a line of code. And so as you witnessed at the end, here Bryant at the beginning of the session believed it and it felt real. And it's been something that he's been carrying around or his mind has been holding on to for a very long time. And at the end of the session, it wasn't there. It was like it had been cleared. The very first question that I know is popping into a lot of your minds right now is, yeah, but is this going to last? And as we've been doing this work for years now, and I can answer that for the vast majority, if I had to estimate, maybe 95, 96, 97% of our clientele, the answer is yes. Yes, it does last. Yes, the belief doesn't come back. The programming doesn't just return. We talk about how, once the belief in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy goes away, it's not like it shows up 20 years later and you're like, oh my God, I woke up today believing in the Tooth Fairy again. Got to work on that one again. When you really clear something in a powerful way, when it's done properly, it's almost as if the mind sees it so differently it can't unsee it, so it doesn't come back. And that's where the work can be permanent or deeply long-lasting. There are always edge cases, and someone has a new trauma or something didn't clear completely, or someone isn't aware of, they weren't sure if it was gone. And there's always a few cases here and there, but for the most part, this work is permanent, long-lasting, and deeply impactful. For most of our clients, when they have a pattern that isn't serving them, there are often many. It could be 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10 root causes or beliefs that are locking that pattern into place. So in our programs, we'll often repeat what Jackson did, not that entire process, but parts and pieces as we're kind of dismantling those root causes of why a pattern is in place. For other people, they'll know what's bothering them. They may show up and go, I've got this pattern. I keep procrastinating and I don't know why. And it's challenging to find those root causes. They're hidden from the person who's working with us, and sometimes they're hidden from us. And so that's when we'll actually go a level deeper and we'll go to kind of what we call level 3, which is our mind clarity work, where it's like we're almost pulling up the hood of a car, or in this instance, like the hood over your brain, and we're looking into your mind and we're finding and pulling out those root causes, and we're looking for insights and aha moments so that we can see what's actually going on and then clear them. So whereas many programs or books or courses try to help you change what's not working in your life by brute force or working with your conscious mind, trying to really talk you out of it, that's illogical. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to prove to you all the ways in which this is not right. You are beautiful. You are wonderful. You are capable. Let's talk about and prove to your mind that it's wrong. Like, there's so much effort trying to change that level 1 conscious mind, when so many of our problems, especially the things that won't go away with a little bit of effort, are level 2 or level 3. And that's where we spend almost all of our time at MindFix, is working on the things that you're not necessarily connected to on a daily basis. So thank you, Jackson, And thank you, Bryant, for showing us a very simple, basic demo of taking one of those root causes and lines of code and showing how it's possible to literally delete it. And now, just to double check, Bryant, you're not like a plant. You didn't fake this whole thing, did you? Is that
No.
real what I just watched?
Yeah, like I, in some ways, I wish it was a plan because it's like that's sat there my whole life, like almost like from the time I was 6 years old, like 36 plus years, and I don't think I ever realized truly how impactful it was, because from the outside looking in, a lot of people would consider me successful, but like recognizing that, and even just in that moment, like I'm like, oh, I've been holding myself back without even realizing, even though I pushed so hard and done so many things, like I actually realized I was actually holding myself from my potential because I was afraid, like, what's the point? And I'm like, crap, I don't even know what I could do now. And I want to try and find out. Like, that makes me really excited and a little emotional.
Well, I think the follow-up question that I know a lot of people ask is, you just mentioned that you've been carrying this around since you were 6. What is it like to have something that you've had your whole life, and then over the course of a matter of minutes, because you know most people are like, oh, it's going to take me years, I've got to go to therapy, I'm going to work at it, it's got to take repetition. And you're like, no, I showed up at this session, I've had this since I was 6, and now I'm talking to you and it's not there. It's almost like splinter's gone. What is it like to have something gone so quickly? Because a lot of people assume it's always going to be amazing and feel great, but some people can find that it's more like a shock, or they're checking to see if it's there, or they're like, the splinter's gone and the pain. What is it like for you to have something cleared so quickly?
I guess it's like I can see it there. Like I know how it's impacted me. I can see all that, but it's like, it was not really there, because like I don't feel that way now. I most people probably nobody knows me really watching this, but like I like can't stop smiling because I'm like, oh, like this is cool. Like I can see the potential now and recognize that, like, even in just this one instance, like I've been holding myself, and it does, like I have tried my whole life to like brute force myself to like be successful, to like not stress about things, to like do all of that. And like in a matter of minutes, like all of a sudden, like, oh, wow, I thought I knew my potential. I thought I knew what I could do. And now I'm like, wow, like that's the word I keep saying. I don't know. It feels very
Amazing.
exciting and freeing.
Very cool. Thank you for volunteering and offering to show other people what's possible. And that's really my hope for today and in this session, if nothing else, because so many people are in a position today where I was, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago, where there's not a lot of hope, or they're like, I've done everything, I've tried everything, or there's an assumption that if I want to shift, it's going to take so much work, and there's so much that has to be done, and it's got to be hard. And I'm hopeful that this session, and by you two volunteering to display this work for people, that they can see there is another way. There are other ways out there. And there are new mind technologies and processes that didn't exist 50 years ago, that things that were previously thought to be impossible or unshiftable, unchangeable, or part of your personality don't have to be burdens that you're required to carry around for your entire life. And when you work the right process or with the right people, things really can change, and it doesn't have to be hard. And it doesn't have to take a long time. So thank you for participating in this demo. And thank you, Jackson, for facilitating it.
Indeed.
Cool. All right, and that concludes part 2 of our MindFix Masterclass. Stay tuned. Part 3 will be coming up, where we're going to level 3, what we call level 3 of the iceberg of the mind, which is the part that we we don't even know what's going on. There's beliefs and there's conclusions and fragmented parts of who we are. And it's almost as if our mind just has kind of shut the door on a lot of these things and we don't have access to them. And through our work, through our mind clarity work, we gently kind of take your hand and grab a flashlight and we go around looking to see if there's anything in there that could be causing you distress or problems. So we're actually going to walk you through a live demo of our mind clarity work in our level 3 work. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much and hope you enjoyed this live demo.